So I went back up to this initial endpoint just to get a list of tasks, and added it produces just JSON. And then when I execute it, Spring again knows that, hey, those don't match, so I'm going to give you that this is not acceptable content type. So again, another example of it just does the right thing for you with the right status codes. Let's see if I hit all of these. Yeah. Path variable is what I was trying to get at with this endpoint. We'll give her one more time and see if I've done something right now. JSON to do tasks. I never fixed it. View only tasks. Get application JSON. Okay, I don't know. My demo is not going to behave today. So the path variable is how you match up something in the path to just a variable in your controller method. So when you're trying to unit test your controllers and you've got information coming from your URI, it's really easy because the signature of your method is just a string with an ID, and there's no request response to them. That's the point. Great question. As long as you use the same name, you're good to go. Say that one more time.
If you don't compile with debug turned on, then the variable names are blocked.
Sure.
Spring has a way around
that. Thank you.
One more question.
Yeah.
If you had a version,
what if I had a version?
if you had a version of the global,
Oh, yeah. This guy? This one?
yeah.
Yeah. That I will get into next. No, that's all right. I knew it was going to happen because I put it on the earlier endpoints. I should have put it later, but no, I will absolutely hit that. Yes, I got this. So the next thing, not next. Wait, one more thing. Interceptors. Handler method argument resolver. This is something that's been renamed in the recent version of Spring. It's messed me up a little bit because we're still on a couple versions back. Used to be called Web Argument Resolver. Now it's called Handler Argument Resolver. And this is cool. Another way to clean up boilerplate code, focus on business logic. It makes testing even easier. And you'll see why. And there's a couple of applications that I've seen and that we use right now at Thompson. One of them is, and the most common, is to extract common HTTP headers. So we've got a web service environment that's bound by a session, and we pass a lot of information via headers. And this way you don't have to, again, get the request object, pull each header individually out of it for every controller method that you want to go. So let's take a look at that. So what I did on this one, I pretended, and you can see it in my Fiddler session, that on every request we get, we want to keep track of who's calling. So assume they log in to a web application, and as part of that session, you fire up and you have a list of headers that you want to pass around just to make sure people are who they are, who they say they are. So we pass around name and we pass around user ID. So when we do that, I can come in and I just made up an object called request context. And request context has just those two fields in them for demo's sake. And notice I didn't do anything special. I just declared that, hey, this method takes the request context. It's got a request mapping of V2 tasks. And then just for another comparison's sake, I used the request header annotation to pull out directly the name header. So here I'm just going to spit out to the logs if I use the request context, and then here's if I just use the request header name. So V2 tasks. Now when I execute this, I get the list of tasks, and then I'll go back to my console output. And here are the two lines that were put out. So it was requested by Matt-123, and then this comes from the header. So let's take a look at that one more time. So this came, and I got the name from that object, and then also just to check, double check, I got it there. Now, the alternative, again, is the request object and then accessing the header right from that. That's a good question, and it's not just any bean. There is some magic or some reason to the magic, I guess. So to implement a handler argument resolver, there's two things you can do. One, yes, there's one way to do this one. You implement the handler method argument resolver interface, and that interface has two methods. One is supports parameter, and one is resolve argument. So you first implement supports parameter to type check and say, okay, if it comes through and sees that there's a request context, make sure that I support filling a request context. And if I do, this method returns true. And if this returns true, then Spring knows to call the resolve argument method. And from here, I can do really whatever I have access to. I can grab headers. The other example that I saw on the web, I'm just trying to find other ways people use this, is the pre-fill entity. So you wouldn't have one in a database session by any means, but you could if an ID, for example, was coming in on the request, you could go get the rest of that entity, and all that would be behind the scenes. So in your controller, you don't have to explicitly do it if you don't want to. Again, for us, it suited itself better as a grab all this meta information that I don't want to go rip out in every endpoint. This way. Yeah. What's that? Yes. I believe it's a wrapper for the HTTP servlet request. Yeah.
So, argument resolver is that running against every endpoint that gets created to create a.
It calls supports parameter for everything. If you have a request, only if you have a request context in that method signature would it actually call the resolve argument. But it is running against every request.
So are there ways to get it built in at all? I'm just thinking like start having, a couple dozen argument resolvers or something.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen any mapping capabilities here. There are with Interceptors that we'll talk about next. Do you know if you can actually map or filter them down on give a URI pattern or something?
Well, I believe that what Spring will do, because this is the information available at application content uptime, so when it does its magic to map these, it doesn't check with every call, but it checks every controller method at all time. So it's not doing this every time. So once you load up, you're not really taking it.
So formal introduction. This is Ryan, and he works on the team very close to me, and has written largely some of the stuff that we do at Thompson. So I brought backup. That's what I'm saying. All right. So that's a handler argument resolver. I think that's all I had to show him. Yeah. Okay, next one I wanted to run through was interceptors. Interceptors are pretty cool. We get a lot of use out of those. Now, interceptors are conceptually like a servlet filter, only they run in the Spring world, not out in the web server context. And so you'd say, well, why use an interceptor when I know how to do a web filter, and I'm comfortable with that. Well, you can auto-wire Spring beans into it. We'll see that. Here's where you can use a more advanced mapping style. So I can say, if the URI pattern's like this, then I want to run these interceptors. If not, then don't. I can choose. You have the target handler object available, essentially the controller and controller method that is going to actually do the work for this endpoint. And then it's not saying you should do this, but you can use AOP around the interceptors if you need to. So.